On this week's Bet the Process podcast, we bring in Joseph LaMagna from the Fried Egg website, Fried Egg newsletter. He is a analytics guru, has done a fair amount of consulting like Moneyball for golf, and knows a lot about golf course design. And this actual episode is brought to you and is sponsored by Troon Access. That we are actually doing a pretty cool offer for Troon Access where if any of our Team Troon members, guys like Justin Thomas, Alex Noren, Gary Woodland, or Rory McIlroy, who's on the board of or who is an investor in Troon, uh, if any of them win, you will get $100 discount off of Troon Access. If you sign up now, you get a $50 access. You can use the promo code PGA, and that's troon.com/access for you to sign up. And you get all sorts of things like discounts at Troon courses and awesome opportunities to go to great events like the preview weekend we're doing at Gamble Sands of the new David McClay Kid course, Scarecrow. So go check it all out at troon.com/access with promo code PGA. And with that, let's start the process. Welcome to another episode of the Bet the Process podcast, where it's a majors week, Rufus.
Major championship
Major
edition.
championship majors. What are you doing? What's different this week? Where are you going to watch where are you going to watch it?
Probably at home. Here.
Really?
Yeah. Where do you go someplace to watch it?
I mean, I happened to be in Scottsdale for the Masters, so I tried to find places where I could sit at a bar and watch it outside and have a nice glass of wine and an adult beverage, etc. So
A glass of wine and an adult beverage?
Well, that is an example of an adult beverage, is my point, really. I mean, I like to watch golf outside for some reason. I do like to watch golf with other people because it is fun to talk about what's happening. We have a Calcutta. I like to watch it with people that are in my Calcutta. So hopefully I'll have a little consortium for the Calcutta. But yeah, no, excited about it. Who should we take? I already took our Splash Sports person, so you can guess who I took.
Have we taken Bryson yet?
No, so I took Bryson.
So you took Bryson.
Yeah,
I think that's the correct choice.
Yes, so I took Bryson. That seemed like a certified no-brainer. I mean, do you have a obvious? Well, I guess at current price, who would you take between Bryson, Scotty, and Rory? You have to take one of them at current price.
Current price.
That's a good question, right? It's a pretty good question.
Bryson.
You'd still take Bryson.
Yeah.
Do you think there's still value on Bryson?
No comment. I mean, Tom's in the background laughing.
But you're already loaded up, so why do you care? You're not going to load up anymore, are you?
I don't know. I mean, I still have a Calcutta to partake in, but
I mean, I don't think anyone in the Calcutta is going to not realize that you're the reason that the Bryson price went down.
Yeah, and I'm still not going to take like a really bad price relative to market on him in the Calcutta anyway.
Yeah, so. You're too disciplined. You're boring.
But I mean, I would still say there's value on Bryson, yes.
Wow, that's crazy. Anything else going on in your life, or should we jump in the interview?
No, I'm working on some I'm not working on the home improvement projects, but I have home improvement projects in the works. I'm getting a new heat pump installed on Saturday, so that's exciting.
That does seem exciting.
I have some window and door people coming next week. It's gonna be great.
Just a little Bed Bath & Beyond with the family.
Exactly.
Okay, well then let's welcome in Joseph from the Fried Egg, who's going to be our guest today. And then, do we want to talk to them on the other side, Rufus, or we just want to do our?
I don't know, Jeff. What do you think?
Sure. Let's talk to them all again on the other side. So we'll welcome him in, and then we'll talk to you guys on the other side. Bet the process. We now welcome in Joseph LaMagna to the Bet the Process podcast. Did I say your last name correct?
You did. That was excellent.
Nailed it.
I would have lost a lot of money betting that Jeff got it wrong.
Why would you get? It's not that hard. What would you say? I would say LaMagna.
I don't know.
La Make America Great Again. Nah. No,
You have trouble with certain names. I don't know why.
it's not my
This one was
first.
not
It's
one of
not.
them.
It's not my first language. It's all right. Anyhow, so Joseph, to our 7 listeners, can you tell us a little bit who you are?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this. I think the very quick background. Grew up competitive golfer, was never amazing, but played competitively, was a caddy for 10 years. Have always been interested in gambling and the predictive side of sports, whether that was like, March Madness pools and stuff as a kid or playing fantasy golf, some of those old sites like Sporting News back in the day. I think as I was kind of like high school going into college, that's when a lot of golf data was starting to become public and people were starting to discuss it. So got pretty into like strokes gained and listening to Mark Brody and trying to predict golf that way. Watched an insane amount of PGA Tour live through college and was always just trying to update the models I was building and trying to predict golf the best I could. Ended up working for 15th Club, a golf analytics company, my senior year of college. I was at the University of Texas at Austin. Worked there for a few months, kind of realized that I wanted to build my own thing. And after I stopped working there for a little bit, finished school and then started building my own database, took it to PGA Tour players, combination of stats and strategy, course management ended up becoming more and more a part of that. And then I've gotten more involved on the media side in recent years, sort of as a byproduct of that. I mean, when I started the golf company, nobody knew who I was. So I started doing some writing just to get my name out there. I mean, agents and players I was talking to had no idea who I was. I didn't have any connections in the golf space. Ended up getting connected to the Fried Egg Golf guys, and I would anticipate that that's part of where this conversation will go. Big interest in design. So I think that intersection of design, data, strategy, that's what I spend the majority of my time on. So yes, I work at Fried Egg Golf.
Are you kind of like, I guess, two former Bet the Process guests, Corey Jez meets Scott Fawcett without the
No, but he has like some. He's like
no.
Corey Jez meets Scott Fawcett with some love of Gil Hands, right? We got to have like the
Yeah.
the course architecture part in there, right?
I think there would be a lot of overlap between. I know that Scott and I view things very differently, and there's certain topics where we have a completely different point
Well,
of
then you're
view.
wrong, right? Sorry.
Wait, I would well, why don't we dive into that? I'm kind of curious where you all differ.
I think especially with the topic like the rollback, and I don't know if we'll get into that, but like I know he's very anti rollback. I'm very pro rollback. So like that would be one one big example. But in terms
To
of
explain what the rollback is to everyone that may not know.
uh big topic in the golf world, certainly one I'm pretty passionate about, but there's whether or not the golf ball goes too far, and there are different angles you could take to that of whether it's an issue of the golf ball itself or if driver heads have become too forgiving. Should there be some regulation to shrink the distances that either professional golfers hit the ball or that everybody hits the ball, including amateurs? So there's a lot of debate about that in the golf world. And then data gets brought in of is there actually a distance problem? And I think I have a pretty fundamentally different view than some of those other people, not just Scott. I mean, there's a lot of people who look at data and conclude that there's not a problem. Randall Chambly would be another person that I vehemently disagree with his takes on a lot of things, including golf course setup and rollback. So that would be a big example. But in terms of on course decisions, even if Scott and I might come at it from slightly different angles, to use a term that's also contentious in the golf world, angles, I think we would end up landing on the same decisions for how you would attack the vast majority of golf holes.
So I guess we'll keep going with the rollback talk a little bit. So why do you think it's such a big problem? I mean, and what do you say to people that say the correlation between driving distance and strokes gained, it has not really changed much over the years?
To me, that is a separate issue. And the reason that a rollback is important has nothing to do with the relative advantage of distance over time. Well aware that distance has always been an advantage, and the longest hitters 30 years ago were also the best players in the world. Like to me, that's not the problem. There are multiple reasons that distance is an issue. For one, designs, the way that golfers play golf courses now are out of scale with the way that they were designed. And obvious examples are like taking fairway bunkers out of play, right? There's a bunker at 310, and that was built to discourage players from, or it was built as a test for the longest players in the world. But once you surpass that 310 or 315 threshold, now you're hitting over the bunkers that were supposed to be designed as a defense. I think that's a problem, but to be honest, like they're much bigger issues. And one thing I talk about a lot is the importance of wide misses finding a penalty. And with fans needing to be on a golf course and infrastructure and concession stands, like it is very difficult to have enough space to both accommodate fans and to host a modern championship and penalize wide misses in a way that players get bailed out frequently. So a great example, probably my favorite example to use, is the fourth hole at Torrey Pines South. People could pull this up on Google Earth. But to me, like that is the intersection of understanding strategy and some of the constraints we've placed upon the game. That's a 25-yard wide fairway where there's a hazard down the left. So the optimal tee shot there is going to be down the right side of that fairway and bring a lot of that fairway bunker into play at Torrey Pines. The problem I have is that you can smash driver and miss even right of that fairway bunker. And you're often going to be in an area where fans are standing, have trampled down the rough, and you can really get away with wide misses, not just on 4 at Torrey, but a lot of holes at Torrey Pines. And we focus so much on how narrow a fairway is, and not nearly enough on what happens when you get way off a fairway. And golf courses, especially that were built a long time ago, but even golf courses that were built recently, they aren't built to where you can if you hit a 325-yard shot offline, you're often going to get bailed out. And I think that's an underrated part of what rollback would address, is that if golfers were hitting it shorter, it would be a more skillful game. And then there's also just the driver head, which has gotten ridiculously forgiving. You can hit it anywhere on the face. That is de-skilling the game. And that might be okay for amateurs. You could convince me that that's what's in the best interest of the sport for amateurs. It is certainly not what's in the best interest for the professional sport.
You bring up a really good point thinking about the dispersion patterns and the big misses versus just misses, because a lot of people harp on rough length and they say, oh, if you make the rough more penal, it's going to neuter distance a little bit or take away that advantage. And we saw what happened at Winged Foot where it was just bomb and gouge. There's sort of what is that sort of sweet spot of like, because if nobody can hit the fairway, then driving accuracy doesn't matter at all, right? That course was the fairways were super firm. It was really tough to hold the fairways. What is that sort of sweet spot for what percentage of fairways hit that sort of would minimize the impact of driving distance, or I guess maximize the impact of like driving skill in a way that keeps the game in balance?
Yeah, I think I look at it just slightly differently in that there's not like an optimal width of a fairway. It's about like what's a little bit off the fairway and how long is that grass, and then what happens when you get way off the fairway. So just as an example, like TPC San Antonio is a great accuracy test. Those fairways are narrow. They're like 25 yards or so. But when you get a little bit off those fairways, there's still some short rough that it can run through. So I just think viewing it a little bit more, not strictly the width of a fairway, but like what the effective width of different playing areas, right? So you get a little bit off at TPC San Antonio, you have that short rough, and then you get way off and you have desert areas. So I think generally a pretty good rule of thumb, like 30 to 32, 33 yard wide fairways, generally wide enough that you can hit them. But like Muirfield Village is a great example where the dimensions are about 30, 32 yards on a lot of those fairways. And if you get way off, you're in thick rough. I don't know how much you want to go into the design of Muirfield Village, but like there's a lot what the tactic used there by Jack Nicklaus is a lot of those greens have hazards in front of them. So if you get off and you're in thick rough, it almost forces you to lay up because you're either bringing the risk of coming up short and coming up in the water, or you have to kind of send it over the back of the green and it's a very difficult up and down. So to sort of indirectly answer your question, it depends on the entirety of the design. Like you could show me a really good accuracy test that has 20 yard wide fairways, but maybe from 20 to 30 yards, there's a little bit of a penalty based on the design. And then if you get way off, there's an even bigger penalty. Like, I don't think there's a magic number when it comes to the effective width of the fairway. It just depends on the totality of the design. And Muirfield Village and TPC San Antonio look completely different, but they're both very good accuracy tests.
See, you're coming at it from a different perspective than me. I actually don't even think about fairway width. I'm just looking at what percentage of people hit fairways to try to gauge how much driving accuracy does or doesn't matter. You've written about you had a really interesting article on your Substack, which I know you don't write there anymore. You write for Fried Egg, but on that I actually just found this yesterday on strokes gained aiming. And so how much like this is a major championship week. We've heard that Quail Hollow kind of neuters the decision-making aspect of majors, right? Everybody's basically gonna play the holes the same way. It's right in front of you. Does it also sort of neuter the decision-making on approach shots and in terms of hitting it to the center of the green, firing at pins, and do we expect Quail Hollow to still test these players' decision-making, course intelligence?
The firmer the greens, then you can get a little bit more of like a huge part of all of that is how much short-sightedness is penalized. So if you're short-sighting yourself, then strategy can become a little bit more important of the extent to which you have to avoid that. But honestly, regardless of conditions, your targets shouldn't change that much. And Quail Hollow is a very vanilla in front of you test that is not the most strategic. Off the tee, you're not going to see it. Golfers have already talked about this. Like, it's just driver over and over again, and the target you're taking, it's not too complex to get to those decisions. Same with the approach. I mean, again, if it bakes out a little bit and there's a little bit of wind, then maybe there'll be a little more strategy, but overall, it's not the most strategic course. And then when you combine that we've played here a bunch and we have a lot of data and golfers are familiar with where the misses are, I wouldn't say this is a golf course that you need to have a ton of experience to play.
So it's interesting because I don't think I'm giving away some huge secret that there is something about majors that tends to be different and that some players persistently overperform in majors while others struggle. JT being one who has struggled in recent years, and like Koepka being the example of a guy that just turns his game up. And part of the question is like, where does that come from? Does that come from the fact that there is more strategy? These are tougher courses and you have to make decisions and you can't just fire at all pins. And if that's the case, like, would we expect the same impact of major history and experience at a course like Quail Hollow, which is more straightforward and which the pros play every year?
I think there's probably a couple different answers to that. I mean, one, I think part of the reason you see players struggle at majors that maybe play well the rest of the year is the courses are a lot more demanding and a lot different. So, I mean, how many courses that we see on the professional golf calendar are true major championship level tests? Like, I know a lot of people would throw out Torrey Pines, but again, that's one that I'd argue is not up to the standard of a major championship test, considering how much you can really spray it around out there. So there's a few, like I think Muirfield Village is a good example where that is sort of the major championship caliber, but I do think pressure and knowing that it's a major, I've never believed more in the sport being different when you're in contention versus, when you're teeing off on Sunday, T30, expecting golfers who are T30 to play better, all things else held equal. Like, it is a different sport when you're feeling pressure. You hear it from every player. They say that. I think it's clear the more you are tuned into it. So I think there's part of that. And then the familiarity. Yeah, I think Quail Hollow, these golfers, I mean, golfers are such creatures of habit and so routine oriented, like knowing which hotels they're going to stay in and exactly where the range is in the locker room and being so familiar with Quail Hollow and knowing the way those putts break. Like, pretty much every player in the field is going to have played here, and it's a pretty straightforward test. So
Except
I
Scheffler.
wouldn't think that. Yeah,
I guess the
Scheffler.
President's Cup, but
Yeah, but again, like, I don't think there's a whole lot that Scheffler. He's really intelligent with the way he manages his way around golf courses anyway, and his caddy has a lot of experience. I would not be worried that Scotty hasn't seen Quail Hollow.
so to my question though, would you say that major, so you're basically arguing that major experience, major over under performance would still matter just like a regular major?
Probably less, since I
Or
think you're not going to have
okay.
to worry about the lack of familiarity and players having seen this place before. But
What's
yeah, I mean,
interesting though
still a major.
is because like we talk about this all the time with like home field advantage in sports where we're like, where does that come from? And I think that we've all gotten to a point now where we believe it comes from a bunch of different factors. And this major thing I've never really thought about deconstructing it this way. And Rufus had sent me this question via text, but what you were just talking about with familiarity, that idea of that's part of what we talk about with home field advantage. It's like this familiarity with like the place, and that helps. So like all those things magnifying, if you remove some of them, like the impact of like this major's impact might be smaller than normal, right? At Quail Hollow. Is Quail Hollow a major worthy place?
This is what's crazy is if 10 years ago, if you were critical of Quail Hollow, you were kind of like on the fringe and a golf architecture nerd. We're already at the point in the week where Quail Hollow is taking like a ton of flack, almost to where I think people are going to get fatigued of it. And I borderline feel bad, and like I want to have a little mercy on Quail Hollow. It's fine. It's not my favorite golf course in the world. At
Who
least
was
it's
the
small.
designer?
It's like Torrey
Uh,
Pines too, right? Torrey Pines is like you didn't use nobody used to be critical of Torrey Pines, and now it seems like everybody is.
yeah, I mean, this has gotten to the point where Quail Hollow has been originally it was designed by George Cobb, but it's been changed a lot over the years. I don't. It's not. I think it's a bad golf course, and that we probably shouldn't have majors there. But this kind of goes back to the rollback point, Jeff, of how many venues can we actually go to? Like part of the reason, the more you get in the weeds on where they can go and why, like Charlotte's got a lot of sponsors. They're going to sell those hospitality tents. There's an airport, there's hotels, like there's enough room to have fans out there. The number of places that can accommodate a major is small and is a shrinking list. Like if you listen to the RNA talk about trying to find open championship venues, many of those which were built hundreds of years ago, they have a real difficult time finding places that you can move tee boxes back and stuff. So again, this just feeds into the merit for having a rollback. But is this a major championship test? No, but I don't know that I think people are a little fatigued of some of the. It's not, the tournament hasn't even started and people are already bashing it over the head.
Who's the best designer for a major? Like if you were like right now building your own golf course, who would you try to hire to design the course knowing that you wanted to play a major at it?
I guess foreshadowing of future content. I'm really not a fan of what Gil Hands built at PGA Frisco, and I think that's a name that probably gets floated around a little bit as uh, somebody who would be a candidate to hire for something like that. So I don't want to be too critical of his work overall, but I was uninspired by what I saw out there. I think Tom Doak, what we've seen in architecture is a return to some of these golden age principles. So if Alistair McKenzie were still alive, like I'd love to nominate him. He designed Augusta National, right? And a lot of the best golf courses in the world, Cypress Point. So seeing that philosophy come back in style, I think is going to be something that you continue to see, and it will, if it's done correctly, pay dividends. Like I think some of those concepts, width and not making it as narrow as possible and rough everywhere. Like I wouldn't want the Jack Nicklaus design philosophy. I know I spoke highly of Muirfield Village, but that's one of the few. Like I can't stand Valhalla. I think that's a very bad implementation of those ideas. So probably a Tom Doak. Like he did Memorial Park, the redo of Memorial Park in Houston, and it hasn't presented that well the last couple of years on the PGA Tour. It's been overseeded and a little soft, but having bold features in the greens, I think we should long irons with big, boldly contoured greens is a really good recipe for a test, and I think runoff areas. So like the way Pinehurst number 2 played, I thought was an excellent major championship test. That's Donald Ross, and I'm glad we're seeing a return to some of those principles.
What about like a
What do you,
Brookline?
I liked Brookline. It's completely different, right? It's a completely different style of test, but I mean Andy Johnson, who runs Friday Golf, I mean he always preaches the benefit of variety, and I do think that's important. I wouldn't want to see the same type of test week in and week out. So I thought Brookline was pretty good, actually. What did you guys like Brookline?
I did. I actually was there at the tournament, and I thought it was a great course.
Yeah.
What do you think of David McClay Kidd as a designer? And this is a total serving question.
I haven't seen enough David McClay Kid courses myself to honestly weigh in on that too much. I know he's building something in Austin, which is where I live, so I'd love to get out and see that, and I'd have a little bit of a different perspective. But I can't speak to his designs enough
So
to
he
give you.
he designed Gamble Sands,
Yeah,
which is one of our courses, and we're opening the new 18 there called Scarecrow. And the program that I run, True and Access, we're running a preview weekend there where people get to play it before anyone else does in June. So you just join True and Access and you get a chance to do that. That's my commercial for
Am I
the
getting
day.
invited, Jeff?
What's that?
Am I going to get an invite?
Are
A
you a
special
True and
invite?
are you a True and Access member? I mean, if
I'm
you're a True and
not.
Access member, you gotta put it in. But there's
Okay.
gonna be a promo code at the beginning of this episode. So, anyways, do
Wait,
we
by the
want to
way,
talk?
I noticed the Butler pitch and putt scorecard behind you. I love Butler pitch and putt, and I feel in Austin, and I feel like things like that there should be more of them. It's just a
totally,
great little place.
totally agree. I think the non-traditional golf facilities, there's more of an emphasis on building stuff like the short par three course. Some really good par three courses have been built in the last 5 to 10 years. I even think practice facilities, like a driving range in a cool short game area, if you can find a way to make the economics work, I'm with you. Butler pitch and putt's great.
My pet peeve on practice is when can you ever practice a fairway bunker shot unless you're playing? There need to be driving ranges where they have a little sand thing where you can practice hitting out of the sand.
Look, let's solve the rollback and then we can get to some of the
Okay.
fringe issues later.
Okay, so Jeff, did you want to go or can
What's
I?
that? Go ahead. Go
You
ahead.
had some, okay.
No, no.
I was gonna say, so back to the sort of idea of some golfers being, I don't want to say more intelligent, but better course managers and understanding risk reward better. Do you have a way of quantifying this and figuring out like, you know, I'm kind of thinking of like an aggression-o-meter or something where you're like, okay, Siwoo Kim, like at the top or close to the top, like JT's up there in terms of like never finding a pin they're not going to want to attack. And then Scheffler, smarter. And then, back in the day, I feel like Jim Furyk was always very, very measured and always took a pretty conservative approaches and
I think it's really hard to
some of the Pro
quantify
60 scores.
Other than anecdotally. I think it's a lot bigger than a lot of people would necessarily appreciate. Like just speaking from like talking to players and working directly with them, hey, we need to improve our long irons, and then they go away for a few months and are working with their swing instructor on their technique on the long irons, and nothing changes. Versus like actually evaluating, hey, where are you aiming? Like, you're short siding yourself a lot. That can often be a lower lift in a way to reduce your scores pretty quickly in a way that's extremely meaningful. Victor Hovland has cited that as reasons for some of his better performance in the last couple of years. I know he isn't playing as well now, but he took a big jump in his performance over the last couple of years, and that was largely attributable to the targets he was taking. So Rory's gotten a lot better with his course management, and something I've been thinking about a ton that I'm sure you guys have too, having your hands in different sports. The world of golf has changed an enormous amount over the last 15 years in the way that it's played, and the number of people now who are taking super suboptimal strategies, like you're kind of just getting left behind. And if you look at the way the NBA is being played and the spacing and the speed, and like you're not having multiple guys on the floor who can't space the floor, shoot threes, like it's a totally different sport than 10 years ago. Football, obviously, like fourth down decisions and stuff, totally different sport. I don't watch soccer, but apparently soccer has been pretty transformed over the last 10 to 15 years in the style that people are playing. So I think you kind of stand out now if you're making those dumb decisions. We don't see as many of those golfers, but I also think that's relevant for this week when, and something that we don't talk about a lot with when it comes to like course history. I mean, if you're looking at the 2017 PGA at Quail Hollow as which golfers played well there, and even if you're looking at players course history in general and going back to like 2019, 18, 17, we are playing a completely different sport than at that time. Not just strategically, but equipment has changed a lot over that time. So I think guys like Jordan Spieth there is a good story to tell of how Jordan Spieth's ball striking wasn't the making all these 25 footers and stuff back in his heyday like wasn't sustainable. And then when you overlap that with how much more optimized the sport has become with especially driving the golf ball, but course management, all these things, I also think that is contributing to some of his underperformance. So yeah, you talk about golfers like a Patrick Reed or a Jordan Spieth. Like I think they've been bypassed in some ways by how much more optimized the sport has become.
Interesting. I mean, I feel like in all these other sports, generally optimization has been meant more aggression. And I mean, I guess I think it's probably pretty similar off the tee in golf.
Right.
But I think the other thing is if we think about things in terms of just gaining strokes, maybe that isn't the most that shouldn't necessarily be the target for players. It should, I mean, just given the incentive structure, how much more first place pays than second place than third place, and so so on and so forth. Getting a tied for 40th doesn't get you very many FedEx Cup points. It doesn't get you that much money. I almost think golfers should be embracing variance more than they do.
I think the main counter argument you'd get that I largely subscribe to is that the optimal strategy isn't reducing scoring chances, and that if you just aimed at every flag, you wouldn't actually make a ton more birdies. So by taking these optimal lines, you're not actually reducing your upside.
And maybe Scheffler's a good example of that.
Right.
Yeah. But so I don't know if we should go back to course design. I had a question on tree removal.
Oh, you're hitting all the hot topics here. Tree removal.
Well, tree removal, personally, I mean, my personal take, which nobody cares about, is I don't know. I think courses with trees are pretty, and I kind of like the framing of it. But doesn't having more trees penalize bigger misses more?
My answer is highly depends, right? So Augusta National, I think, is a great example of it's a golden age course, and a lot of people who love golden age architecture are very pro tree removal often. But like even Alistair McKenzie himself wrote about the importance of strategically placed trees and how that can be beneficial to testing professional golfers. So I think the short answer, strategically placed trees, like absolutely. And part of what I appreciate about trees at times is that it forces players to hit non-stock shots. Like otherwise, golfers can pretty much hit their stock shots all over the place. By actually having trees that force you to curve the ball in different directions, that's one of the few ways that you can make players shape the ball. Angles and I mean mainly angles. Like
Creativity.
that was the thought, I think, especially like, oh, this hole, even not just angles into the green, but like, oh, this hole curves a little bit this way, therefore you have to hit a draw. And I think what we've seen is that that's actually not true. You can still often just hit your stock fade down that hole, even though it's curved a little bit the other way. So there's merit to that, Rufus. Like I think trees can be beneficial that way. But I mean, a lot of the tree removal comes from like opening up sight lines. Trees often can encroach upon the playing corridors and really not play the way that the golf course was designed to be
I mean,
played.
and the challenge, right, for all of this is that these courses that have to have whatever 361 days of the year, like amateurs playing them, right? And so ultimately, like all these things that we talk about, like tree removal is great because generally it speeds up play, which is I know a lot of the reason that like like if you go to like a lot of these private clubs, why like these people want to. I think like the Arcos guy, like I've heard like he's like all he wants to do is remove trees because like at his country club because he just wants things to go faster,
Well,
and
also,
like good.
well, the USGA has put out some information on that. Trees can make it very difficult to grow grass. Like if you're overshading certain areas that never see sunlight, like there are also some practical considerations agronomically for trees. So I'm not go ahead and cut every tree down, but I think there are often very good reasons for why you should cut trees. And using trees as a way to combat distance, I think is not solving the root issue there.
So here, my hot take, I think golf would be a better game if golfers only could have 8 clubs in the bag. I just pulled out the number 8 out of my hat. I haven't actually thought that much about the specific.
Out of your hat or out of your ass? Because it seemed more out of your ass. So
I mean, I've always thought like a provocative rule that I don't think it's practical, but I've always thought it'd be cool. Like, what if you could only hit driver like 3 times around, and there'd be some strategy as to when you wanted to use it. And again, do I actually think that they should do that? Probably not. But I'm with you that it's just gotten a little over optimized. And considering that the equipment's gotten friendlier and more forgiving, and you have 14 clubs and every yardage dialed in, like the game has become a little solved.
I want there to be more creativity. Like that's kind of what I enjoy. Like, have you ever done the 5 club challenge? Is it 4 or 5? I don't remember.
You can do 4 or 5.
But
Yeah, it's fun.
yeah,
You can do
It's awesome.
one club challenge. There you
you
go.
could do that.
Well,
And
and look,
having to
and I
decide which clubs you're taking for this particular round, like I mean, I think it would make the game a lot more fun. And yes, scores wouldn't be quite as low, but I don't think they'd be that much worse.
and every player will tell you this though, Rufus. Like if they played with equipment in the early 2000s, the golf ball and clubs have changed so much. You cannot hit those shots that they used to hit back in the early 2000s. Like the ball doesn't spin enough, but you can't curve it enough. Everything's been optimized to fly as straight as possible and to be as wind resistant as possible. So it's not just
My
a matter
my
of the
ball
number of
doesn't do
clubs
that.
in there.
My
Well,
ball curves a lot mostly when I don't want it to.
I hate to break it to you, but you're not playing quite the same level that these guys are.
No.
Okay, let's talk about the PGA
PJ.
specifically. Our listeners are going to want to get some takes, some people to bet on, that type of thing. I mean, like if the conventional wisdom is that you can hit it and forget about it, like are we talking about, Bryson and Rory and all the usual suspects that are long, like a Minwoo Lee, all those types of people, or am I oversimplifying this analysis?
You're not oversimplifying it. I don't know that I'm going to have crazy hot takes since I think this golf course, the reputation is pretty established and well deserved. Like Bryson and how well he's driving it. I know his number has plummeted in betting markets, and I think that's largely deserved. I think Bryson's a tough out this week. So yeah, seeing Rory, Scotty, and Bryson at the top, guys who smash it. I mean, I think the most interesting angle of this week probably is like, okay, well, if you gave me 10 million to one on Brian Harmon, I think we'd all agree that it'd be worth 10 million to one. It's like some of those short hitters who can, if we all agree it's a bomb fest, and it is, like, but what chance do you give somebody to grind it out in the other direction? It's not zero. So that's probably the most compelling part from a modeling standpoint. But no, I'm
I mean, who's the
fully with,
grinder that
Well,
you would at the prices that you've seen? Is there a grinder that you're interested in, like a short hitter that you're interested in?
I
Because
think
that would be the counter, right? The market is probably very
right,
well adjusted to the
right.
idea that the bombers are hitting it long.
Yeah, I'd probably have to look a little. A couple of long shots I think are interesting this week. Aren't necessarily that mold, but maybe people will make fun. I do think Keith Mitchell is at the right price. Like Keith Mitchell fits this golf course really well. Again, that's not cutting against the
so good off the
narrative.
tee.
What'd you say?
He's so good off the tee.
Yeah, and if he was going to catch a hot putting week, which he would need to contend, like I think a golf course like this in this area of the country and his familiarity, like it would be the type of place he would. I also think Harris English is kind of an interesting name. I'm not sure people realize how hard he's hitting the ball. He's like kind of consistently hitting it around 178, 180 ball speed, and I think the first time I stumbled upon that, I was pretty surprised at Harris English's length. Won at Torrey Pines earlier this year. Believe he finished in the top 5 at a Wells Fargo in the past. So somebody like him wouldn't completely shock me, but yeah, I don't think you're going to see too many guys with a ball speed of like 175 or lower competing in this. I don't think they're going to win. Maybe they'll finish tied for 7th or tied for 8th, but I don't think you're going to see too many 168 ball speed. Like Russell Henley to me would be the classic example where his ball speed is kind of prohibitive this week.
Any
Thoughts? Oh,
Go ahead, Rufus.
I was gonna say, I mean, it's quite something what we're seeing from Bryson off the tee this year. He's and I looked like in Korea, his performance in Korea 2 weeks ago was better than any single one of Scheffler's performances all of last year.
Are
It
you
wasn't
just
better
talking
than
about like a
Scheffler and
strokes gain number?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, but one interesting guy I think is Xander, coming back from the injury and he's kind of struggled off the tee, but he was actually number 1 in strokes gained off the tee on Sunday at Philadelphia Cricket Club. Do you think Xander is back?
I
See
think he's
what
one
you
of the
did
most
there.
interesting names. Yeah, I wrote him up for like a little weekly article I do. he's pounding it. He's hitting like 185, 188 ball speed. He picked up a lot of ball speed going into last year. I think it's really hard to deal with somebody like Xander right now because I do believe a lot in the competitive reps, and he hasn't had that many reps coming in. But uh, do I think he should be priced like some of the top guys? No, but right after Bryson, you could sell me that Xander should be next. I'm also a big believer in Ludwig, and I believe that Ludwig optimism will age very well over the long run. One of the best drivers of the golf ball in the world. So he and Xander, I'm not saying they're mispriced. I mean, they're probably priced pretty appropriately, but I think those are two of the next guys right there.
Despite the fact that Oberg has not been playing well lately.
He's been driving it fine, right? The iron play hasn't been as good recently, but no, I mean, I wouldn't take him over Xander, but if I'm picturing guys who on Sunday could actually win the golf tournament and wouldn't shock me if they're ripping it down the middle over and over again and making birdies, like I think Ludwig is on that short list.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. He's lost over his last month. He's lost a half a stroke on approach relative to his baseline and a half a stroke putting. So that's basically what's done it. He's been same guy off the tee.
And contended in the Masters and won it Tory earlier this year. Like he hasn't been as consistent as he should be, but I mean, you talk to people, that's like one of the best college golfers they've seen in the last 10 to 15 years. I just think zooming out a little bit and being exposed to Ludwig in his prime, maybe he's not quite to his prime yet, but I think Ludwig optimism will age well.
Maybe he shouldn't quit in the middle of 18 when he realizes he's not going to win and just, triple bogey 18 to go from second to whatever he ended up
I was happy with
T9.
that.
I'm sure you were.
What about
As an
Hideki?
owner of
Any
okay.
Hideki love this week? I think Hideki's just an interesting name of somebody who can randomly pop up and win. And when he's on, he looks like he's the best golfer in the world. That his A game can pretty much contend with anybody. Doesn't bomb it, but I always think when Hideki gets to the right price, he's at least worth a look. Any thoughts on Hideki?
I have him priced right around 60 to 1, so I don't have a strong opinion one way or another there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Rufus, you have any thoughts to share with us on people that you think that are long shots, or are we just keeping this too tight to the vest with
I
the
mean, we
Calcutta coming up
have a
this afternoon?
Calcutta in a little over 3 hours, and so I don't want this information getting out. And if the podcast drops later, then sure, but
Yeah, I guess it'll drop in an hour or so you don't have to say anything.
What about the most
I
interesting name in the world, Joaquin Niemann? You gonna divulge? Joaquin Niemann's like the most polarizing name in golf.
I was low on him going to the Masters. I think I made him like 80 to 1 fair. I'm higher on him here,
I agree.
but and I feel like I'm kind of higher on the live guys than I was at the Masters. I think
A lot of good drivers.
as you pointed out, the most of the top guys off the tee in the world right now are on the live tour, and this is a course where being good off the tee really does matter. What
So, non-answer on Niemann. No,
I make him, my price on him is like 45 to 1.
fair. Yeah, I think
Right.
that's an interesting name this week.
What about like a Morikawa who's not super long, but I feel like he's I don't know. I've just been waiting for him to explode this year at some point. It feels like he's very close.
We all have been.
I
We
know.
all have been.
I mean, I think Collin Morikawa is an excellent golfer. I probably feel pretty similarly to how you do about him. Maybe some of the ball flight issues and some of the corners he can't quite cut. There's a couple spots you can out at Quail Hollow. Like you can take it over the trees on 2 down the left and get a pretty big distance advantage. But I think sometimes that's a little overblown of like why Rory's so well suited here. Oh, because he can take it over this fairway bunker that nobody else can. Like that is true, but that's not every hole out there. So I mean, I think Colin could hang, but he'd have to have a pretty darn good putting week. I'm not like a doubter or anything, but I think he's probably priced pretty appropriately.
So you don't think
I'm a doubter of his putting.
So you think in essence there's a big difference between a guy like some of these guys just have very different upside as a result. To win, everything would have to go right if you don't have the distance.
I don't think that Colin can hang with Rory, Scotty, or Bryson if any of them bring their A plus game. I think he'd have a very hard time keeping up with a dialed Rory.
He just doesn't have the same ceiling because of the distance.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of it. And those guys have a very well-rounded game. I mean, Rory's good at everything. I think an interesting angle is like, is this a letdown spot for Rory? And I think that's so hard to predict, but he came off like maybe the most emotional win of all time a month ago, and he's played twice since then. Zurich, a partner event, and then Philly Cricket Club, where you can just go out and kind of spray it anywhere. So I don't know. I don't think it's crazy that Rory would have a letdown spot, but I wouldn't want to bet against him on a course that he's just completely shredded.
All right. Well, Joseph, thank you for joining us. Really great. Well, I'd love to have you on again, obviously, to even just nerd out on. I mean, the course design stuff is awesome. Like that is cool. And like, just give our listeners where can they see your work?
You can subscribe to the Friday Golf newsletter. We put out a free newsletter 3 times a week, so I usually write in that once or twice a week. That's probably the best place.
All right. Thanks, Joseph.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's fun. It'll be a good tournament.
That was our interview with Joseph LaMagna from the Fried Egg. Rufus, anything interesting to you from that interview? What I thought was interesting was that there was some serious golf nerding out, which I liked. The amount that he knew about golf courses, like I guess that's what the Fried Egg is kind of based on. So that's like his roots. Do you find that stuff interesting, like knowing about different course designers and what they do?
I do. I don't think I know as much about particular course designers, with the exception of Robert Trent Jones, who I've played enough of his courses to see a lot of themes there. But I'm very interested in golf course design, and I think Tom and I have had conversations about it, and I think our dream would be to one day be able to like own a golf course and like design a golf course with
I don't
obviously
think you're that far off from owning a golf course because I don't think they're that expensive
No,
because
they're not. They're just very expensive to maintain and run.
But
And
no,
to
you have to run
profitably.
them correctly. Like you need to hire a company like Troon to run them
Yeah,
directly for you. There you go.
we'll hire you.
What is there a designer that sticks out in your head? And for me, like I don't know enough about this, but is there a designer where someone says it's a blah 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 course, and you're like, oh, that will make me want to play it? There's probably only one person that actually that does it for me, and I'm like, oh, then I'm interested in playing it.
Who is that for you?
Alistair McKenzie.
Okay.
Just because there's so much. I've played a bunch of his courses, and there's so much like, you know, aura around him, and there's recognizable things about his courses that I understand, and yeah, he's probably the one.
I mean, so I've done a lot of Robert Trent Jones golf trips in Alabama. So I played a lot of the RTJ courses. I played a lot of Don LaRosse courses just because he was so prolific. I mean, and some Pete Dyes as well. But I don't know. I do like these sort of older, like Northeast courses that I guess the more golden age courses over the sort of more newer, well, like I don't love desert golf, for example. So, I mean, I definitely have opinions there, but for me, it's less the designer and more just, I don't know, the design.
But the designer makes the design, so theoretically, there's
Or
both
his
a
minions
causal,
do,
there's both a
his or her
causal impact
minions.
and a correlation to that.
Like Pete Dye did barely designed any of his golf courses. It was all his wife.
And then they were probably better. Okay. Well, good luck for you in the PGA Championship. It's exciting. I'm excited.
Same to you, sir.
Same to you. I mean, we'll probably have to discuss some Calcutta stuff, but whatever.
We'll reconvene here in 3 hours.
Yeah.
In
exactly.
Calcutta. And
Yes.
I have a squash match before that. So
all right. Good luck, everyone.
Bet the process.